Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. We got another fall camp takeaway show. This time, SMU's defense and another former player joins Hayden Howerton, myself. This time, it's former SMU tight end John Hampton. So I'm sure some of you guys will, of course, enjoy John joining us. And we do all of that and more on this edition of the podcast, which starts right now.
You can't plan for everything, but you can be ready for anything. That's where we come in. Northwest Insurance Agency covers the wait, what? Moments in life with real coverage, real people, and real fast help. We offer sombrero-style coverage that protects your possessions, your loved ones, and everything else that fits under a sombrero. Call us today for a quote at 855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
That's right. Wrapping up fall camp with our breakdown of the SMU defense. Earlier this week, we got a chance to sit down with SMU defensive coordinator Scott Symons and pick his brain before game week. The last time we'll see him before the bye later this season after the TCU game. And he really shared where his defense was. So we'll talk a lot about that. And we'll talk about how this defense is going to look different in this edition of the podcast, which is, of course, is presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Give Mark Villasana a call, 214-352-5656, or email him at info@nwagencies.com. As SMU's defense looks to turn the page from an elite 2024 campaign, they'll do so with a lot of new faces, including an entirely new starting defensive line. Of course, there are some players that played starter-like snaps with Isaiah Smith. Boy, that might be an issue now with Isaiah Robertson on the roster. But Isaiah Smith, Turbo, and Cam Robertson returning off of that edge position. And, of course, the biggest story of that defensive tackle position, arguably, is that Jonathan Jefferson Uno, who is going to be a starter, could very well have been a preseason all-ACC type of player, is not going to be available this season because he went down with a knee injury in the spring. But SMU went to work in the transfer portal, revamping that defensive line. So let's start there. Defensive line, my takeaways on that unit. The big takeaway for me is how much speed there is in that unit. I think it's a group that really has the ability to impact plays negatively because of their speed. This is not going to be last year's defense where they absolutely wore people down, play by play with a massive nose tackle in Tank Booker, with elite level defenders like Elijah Roberts or Jared Harrison Hunt or a freak athlete in Jafari Harvey, and all the depth that they had on top of that. They're not going to do that, at least in my opinion. They are going to have all sorts of different players and ways to look at this defense and say, how can we get the matchups that we need to then make negative plays? How do we move people around to make that happen? That is a big question for this SMU defensive staff, because they do have a lot of changes. They do have some new faces up front that are going to be needed to put this team in the right position to win a bunch of games. And they went out and they said, you know what? In the transfer portal in December, they got what they needed to in Jeffrey Emba and Terry Webb. They were able to bring them in. Those are two guys that they really liked. And it took a minute. It was not the easiest thing in the world. But, man, the step forward that Jeffrey Emba has taken has been a massive storyline on that defensive line. And when you look at Jeffrey Emba, 6'6", 320, just looks every bit of $1 million. That's how you draw them up. That's how you want them to look. And for SMU to have that is kind of a unicornish athlete. And at the same time, you pair him next to Terry Webb, who has some elite twitch and quickness. We've heard some of the offensive linemen talk about him, and he's a little bit on the shorter side, but kind of a stouter, true, not nose tackle like a Tank Booker, but probably going to play that nose from what I understand, and is going to be somebody that in pass rush situations, SMU feels pretty good about. If you were ever out at practice, Terry Webb is probably the one wearing that single digit that would probably impress you the most based on kind of how he looks. Like SMU has a Cavante Spears, they nickname him Shaq, that they brought in the summer, and they bring in a Wu Spencer from Louisville to this position, and they have DeMarge Lewis, who's now healthy. He was basically not here in the spring because he was recovering from injury, but now you have some of those guys who really kind of look the part a little bit that seem like they're playing behind those two. But Terry is kind of the unassuming one in a sense. But man, he can work you with some pass rush moves. He has some quickness to him, and he's put some offensive linemen in tough positions because of that. So there's some excitement around the group that they have, and they feel like there's going to be a spot where they will get what they need to out of that group because they have Calvin Thibodeau leading the charge at the interior defensive line spot. They have Sam Dunham at the defensive ends, outside linebacker, bandit spot, coaching them up. Demerick Gary has really come in and helped out the defensive ends as well, coaching them up. And while all that is going on in the defensive tackle room, and it was kind of, I don't want to say it was drama, but it was perilous at times, or it was dire straits, kind of looking for defensive tackles to replenish what SMU was, what they had last year and what they thought they had coming back with Jonathan Jefferson. So when you kind of move forward now to spring and you see Jonathan Jefferson go down, you're like, oh man. Then they go out and address the position. They kind of fix it. Then they bring in Akil Washington, and all of the sudden, and I think they brought in Ja'Kai Lang in the spring. I could be wrong. Pretty sure they didn't have him here in the spring. They got him in the summer. Yes, committed April 20th. Then all of a sudden you say, okay, they have 5 transfer defensive linemen that they brought in, but at the same time, then they just went out and they brought in a bunch of these edge kind of fun skilled pass rushers and defensive ends that you got to be feeling like they're in good shape with, just as a whole, to now move guys around and kind of have some fun with them. So it's a unique situation that they're now in with what they're doing up front because they have so many pieces. And that's what I learned in fall camp is this isn't a defensive room. This isn't a defensive line room that is going to be your run-of-the-mill defensive line group. It's going to be a group that you have a lot of different pieces and you try to create matchups. And that's what SMU did in fall camp. And again, we were pretty limited as far as what we could see or not see, but it was apparent as they were going through it that they had a plan to create matchups and kind of have some fun with this. So it's different. It's not going to be the same, but at the same time, it's talent and it's speed, which the speed aspect is pretty different than last season for this group, in my opinion, at least. They wore you down in, down out last year. This year's defensive line group has speed and quickness and some of that skill set to them, which is my biggest takeaway from fall camp. Seeing it all together now when you add in Akil Washingtons and Billy Waltons and DJ Warners and Ja'Kai Langs and Trey Wilsons to what you had with guys like Cam Robertson and Isaiah Smith, the 2 guys that were playing a bunch last year. So really unique position for them to be in with all of that. And I'm really intrigued to see how it all pans out. I think Scott Symons, and he and I spoke a little bit after he got done talking with the media earlier this week. And he kind of shared, well, I'm going to be in a different situation because I'm going to have, this and that to kind of play with. I've got to see what my guys can do. That it's just a different situation than what he was used to last year, which was kind of play base and attack people head up because you have more depth. You have size up front. You have 2 veteran linebackers, which we'll get to in a second, and just kind of beat people into submission. So that's it's kind of my biggest takeaway on the defensive line for fall camp, the versatility, the speed of that group, and how when you watch them this fall, it's going to be really important that they study and play really smart because they could potentially be asked to do a bunch of different things as far as moving them around and playing different stunts and all sorts of different things. So we will be watching that closely as we bring you coverage at ontheponyexpress.com, which you can subscribe for just $1 for more in-depth coverage of your Mustangs. Before we break down the linebacker room, do want to remind you guys, of course, about our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. Go up 75 in McKinney today. Visit their 4 dealerships, Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi, and get employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles. You can go to the Thomas Auto Group. You can go to thomasautogroup.com, browse their selection, see what you're interested in. If they don't have something you want, talk to them. Maybe they can find it for you. Maybe they can bring it in. Maybe they can do all of those things that you need when you're looking for a vehicle. It doesn't just have to be, here's what we got, take it or leave it. They can work with you, and they'll do it because Brandon Thomas and his team love the ponies. They love the Mustangs. Brandon Thomas, SMU alum, running the show up there at the Thomas Auto Group. So appreciate their support. When you look at the linebacker room, the support that they got last year from the defensive line was huge. And Kobe Wilson, Ahmad Walker, Alexander Kilgore able to make plays all over the field because of that. This year, again, what will be different for this group? Will it be needing to be more assignment football because they're playing and it is assignment football always, but your assignments could look different because of what you do up front. Again, last year, they had bigger bodies that were just able to take up a little bit more space and allow some of these guys to make plays. This year, will the linebacker group have to make more plays themselves? That's what we're going to find out. What we know right now, I think, and friend of the show, Bill Armstrong, did sit in on the press conference of Scott Symons and asked on behalf of Horse and Hound magazine if there was a dog or dogs that was coming up through this SMU defense with his dog, Elijah Robertson, leaving the program, going off to the NFL, play for the Bucks. And Scott actually, to his credit, gave a great answer because, of course, Bill asked the question. You got to give the man an answer. And but it was the last question. It was great. Good little positive one to end on. But I mean, he talked about Zakai Barker having a little bit of that dog in him, kind of that dog mentality. And Zakai is, if you were at our event to kick off the season on this past Sunday at Manny's, you got a just straight up approach from him. He's one of the guys on this team that I think is really, really, really bought in such a great way. And SMU needed that. They needed that from him right away because you have Alexander Kilgore, who's been around. He is very much a lead by example type. He works his tail off. He basically lives in the facility, and he is somebody that they have huge expectations for. He's got to be more vocal, and Zakai Barker coming in and helping with that has really helped, and he got a shout out from Scott Symons as far as being a dog. You have some players like Brandon Maiazono and Brandon Booker and Justin Medlock who have really had good camps. This linebacker group, I guess my takeaway is you have a lot more options this year that we're probably going to see on the field versus last year. And so that's worth keeping in mind. It's just going to be a different scenario. It's going to be a different setup for this group. It's not going to be the same thing you saw last year. So that's worth keeping in mind as you watch the early season unfold. I mean, Kobe Wilson didn't emerge for SMU in 2023 until later in the year. This year, I think you could kind of see that third linebacker, whoever that is, outside of Alexander Kilgore and Zakai Barker, be that kind of path. Like you're not going to know who that third linebacker is early in the season, and all of a sudden you're going to be looking at our breakdown of PFF snap counts, and all of a sudden you're going to see X player, whether it be Brandon Maiazono, Justin Medlock, or Brandon Booker, really rise up as far as, oh my gosh, wow, he played a bunch of snaps last game. Those are all things that can happen. So we'll be tracking that really closely because that, like a lot of spots on this defense, I think you're going to see position battles continue, and they're going to rotate and have depth and have competition that keeps going into the season. And then you settle in and you see what the identity of your defense is and who you need the most out there on the field. So linebacker group, the biggest takeaway is there's going to be a lot of players that play, in particular early in the season, while they figure this out. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at StatusJet as well. Of course, statusjet.com. Reach out to them today and plan the trip of a lifetime for your season of SMU football, whether it be one trip or multiple trips. StatusJet will get you all hooked up. There's no big monthly fee. There's no upfront massive line of credit you need to open. It's all done on a case-by-case basis and one-by-one flight plan and things like that. So when you mention On the Pony Express, you'll get a discount on a round-trip flight. So make sure you reach out to statusjet.com today and look at your options for this football season. They'll take care of you. The secondary. This one is probably very easy to start off with because Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia are your two stars. They're your dogs. That's who Scott Symons kind of immediately pointed to as a whole. They're the dogs. They are. They are two of the best safeties in the country. Isaiah Wacobia has gotten some All-American love, and rightfully so. All those things are well-deserved for both of them, the way they perform, the way they make plays. And Scott Symons said Ahmad Moses is one of the best post safeties in the country, and he doesn't want to take him out of there. But at the same time, they both know this defense like the back of their hand. They can play multiple positions, but you're going to see Isaiah Wacobia and Ahmad Moses really be those back-end guys for the most part. And at nickel is where you're going to see the biggest change. And I am trying to decipher Scott Symons, trying to figure out what they're going to do. But Lamadrick Spencer, Kyron Chambers, and Jaden Milner-Jones are your three guys to watch at that nickel position. And all have done good things. All look pretty different on the football field. And Lamadrick Spencer kind of looks more like a corner, kind of a little bit more wiry frame, but he's bulked up a little bit since the spring. You had Kyron Chambers, who was, head and shoulders above everybody in the spring. And he's kind of been that veteran who's been around a little bit in the system. And then Jaden Milner-Jones, who was hurt a lot of the spring, has really come on and has been the highest graded safety in fall camp, according to Scott Symons. So those things are really important to keep an eye on when you see this position battle, because this is the position battle that can go way into the season. That is what I'm expecting for this group. And if it does, it is, not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not, doesn't make it a great thing either. I think this is one that is going to be settled later in the season as they get guys more snaps, as they get guys more experience, and see kind of how it all shakes out. So that's the big takeaway on the safety side of things. At corner, we'll wrap up with this. I think they're much improved at the corner position. Between adding Zay Gentry and Javion Holiday, who came in and went to work, that's great depth. That's length that SMU hasn't had at the corner position from the high school ranks in a minute. Speedy Nettles has been there, kind of steady a little bit. Hasn't really taken that big jump that you wanted to see from the spring to now, in my opinion, at least. And that leaves Deuce Harmon, Marcellus Barnes, and Jalen Davis Robinson as really being your top corners overall in that group. And at the same time, I think they're going to be improved. I think Deuce Harmon has taken a step up. You're not going to have the early season letdowns with Deuce Harmon that you had, and he's kind of admitted, last year. You're not going to see that. He's improved maturity wise. He's not having to learn things. He's been around now. And this is his last year. Jalen Davis Robinson has that speed. He's managed to stay healthy in fall camp. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up being a starter alongside Deuce Harmon or alongside Marcellus Barnes. I don't know how they're going to be shifting those guys around or what kind of plan is. But for Marcellus Barnes, he is really the one that they are hoping steps in and looks the part right away. That's the big question. Can he do that? He was hurt as a true freshman at Syracuse some, but played at a high level or a good enough level to see the field right away for a Fran Brown, which says a lot about him. But then you have the question of, okay, he didn't have spring. He had to watch, getting him in the defense, making sure communication is there, because this defense might not have as much room for error because the front seven has seen so much changes. you kind of thought going into last year the front seven was going to be really good, or the front six, whatever you want to call it, was going to be really, really good. And it was. This year with all the changes, it's a little bit of a, okay, think it's going to be good again, but what, is it going to take a minute? The secondary with the returners of Deuce Harmon, Jalen Davis Robinson, coupled with Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia, they got to lead. They got to be the dudes. And then you need somebody to step up at nickel, and you need a Marcellus Barnes to be very, very good. And if Marcellus Barnes is very, very good, which is what they bet on him being when they brought him in from Syracuse, that changes the outlook on the back end. It allows them to maybe tag some man coverage and do some different coverages across the field, which SMU has not really had the ability to do. So what I've learned from the cornerback position is there's better options, and I think it's going to be better from a pure man-to-man coverage standpoint, and especially health-wise, it looks like everything's in good shape, but you just got to see it, and they need to show it in a big way. So it's hard when you don't have a ton of practice time, but that's kind of the feeling I've gotten watching the cornerback room. So with that, guys, season is here. Game week starts next week. Dean Rolski will have your breakdowns next week as we get ready for game week, and I'll be on a last trip before season starts. So one little break from the heat up in Maine, and we'll be back in time for East Texas A&M, 8 p.m. Central and Ford Stadium on Saturday, August 30th. But before we go, do want to send it over to Hayden Howerton and myself interviewing former SMU tight end John Hampton. So we'll do that now, and we'll catch you next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Now, this one is going to get some people fired up as former SMU tight end John Hampton.
Hey, what's up?
What's going on?
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, you're a veteran of making on-air appearances, and here you are. Look, you've played here. You've seen it from above as a analyst on the radio broadcast crew, and now you've seen it from the high school side of things, doing play-by-play in color and Alito. This is a program that has changed a lot in your eyes, I'm sure, over the last 20 years.
Night and day. I mean, it's not even the same setting, not the same atmosphere. And I say that with full respect for where we are now, where the hill that we've climbed. Anybody my age and not so much from the 80s era, but those 90s and early aughts guys, we all had really good high school careers. We got scholarships to come to SMU, and then it was something that happened when we got here, and we couldn't quite couldn't turn anything around, and it was just like you kind of left here as a loser in a sense. It's like we didn't get anything done that we came to do. And then there was a window where it's like, is it ever going to happen? And you kind of felt like, well, we're just going to be relegated to that. And then, bam, you look up now and you're like, between this complex and then what they've done on the field these last 5-10 years, man, anybody involved with this place there's just nothing but pride, nothing but just an appreciation, because, like I'm saying, those 90s and aughts guys, we know how far the hills, how high the hill has been to climb, and this is awesome. I mean, it's just we were sitting there watching practice today. I was watching with former defensive linemen, and we look out there, and back in the day, you couldn't wear single digits as a defensive lineman, and all four starters are wearing them, and they're huge, and they're just grown men getting ready for the NFL. And I looked around, I was like, and the defensive linemen would be the first ones to admit it, but like, we wouldn't crack, we wouldn't be getting recruited, we wouldn't get snaps. And that's good. That's what you should want. We should want this to become a super high level place, and they're doing it. So I'm super proud. I mean, there's just everybody I talk to on a regular basis, former players, teammates, classmates that didn't play. It's just it's a reason to be super proud, and long overdue. We did our time. We waited long enough.
What was your experience like as your playing days at SMU? What were some of your favorite memories? I know. It might just be more hanging out with the guys, maybe, but
a few different. Man, so I remember a true freshman year we beat Fresno in the Cotton Bowl, and they had like a top 20. They were like 23, 24 somewhere, and we knocked them off on a Thursday night. That was great. That was cool. That was the first hell yeah, kind of ruined somebody's season. We beat KU in here to open the stadium.
Yeah, and, that's a cool memory for the stadium. Yeah,
25 years ago, it felt hotter than it did. I mean, about this heat, we wore them down. They couldn't handle it. Like, that was a really cool memory. And then just finishing it up. I know it sounds bad because there wasn't enough on field where it was like, hang our hat on. but just the friendships for life, the best friend, seeing guys today that, whether I've seen them in the last 5 years or the last 2 or 3 months, just every one of them is a pick right back up, sending pictures to buddies who couldn't be here, and like just that pride and that joy is so, that bond is, you always hear about it when you're young, like it's not going to be broken, and and we didn't even have enough wins, like we didn't have like reunions of conference champs kind of things, and we still have the bond as if we did, and that's that's what I've always taken back. It's like, how much could you imagine if we had won? How much fun this would have been? How great this all would have been. Like, we had the best time, and we were averaging 4-7 every year. But the people we all picked to come to this school. When you're 18 years old, you have all the schools to pick from, and so whether it's a kid, it's here, through a transfer portal or what, we all elected to pick this place. So it's a brotherhood for life. It's a bond for life, and couldn't be prouder to. I'll wear it for life. My parents love it. Siblings, everybody. It's a family. It's a thing. Like we're all ponies.
It's something we all got in common. What was your reason for coming to SMU?
Well, they offered a scholarship. Yeah, that was a really cool thing. I thought that was really awesome. I remember my parents not having to pay for college. At the time, so I was a late '90s kid. I played tight end, and there weren't very many schools throwing. And so I kind of projected, and those looking for tight ends in that era, you needed like a 6'4", 250-pound extra offensive tackle, a third tackle, and I just wasn't. I was more of a receiver, and that was just cutting edge, man. It was just too much. You're running passes, you're running routes, and you're catching balls. Like
you have to learn both.
Yeah,
catching and blocking.
Yeah, you need to be doing more neck rolls. You need to be like blocking, bro. Hat speed. I'm like, no, I could just want to get open. Like, so I kind of had a limited selection from that point. And then I kind of looking at it, it's like, I didn't really think I was going to go to like Middle Tennessee. I wasn't going to go to New Mexico. I wasn't going to go to like Albuquerque. And an hour away from Burleson. And so I knew that I knew it was an hour away, and it was a world away from where I'd known, but it was still just an hour. And so like that was where I was like, man, this is a really great, and I knew I had another brother playing college at the time, so I wanted my parents to be able to kind of split, be able to catch his play. And then at that point too, like, some local guys from my hometown would be like, remember, son, if you injure that knee, where do you want to be in school? And I was thinking, have you seen those kids at us? Have you seen those students? Like, SU is a good place to be. Like, that would be. So anyway, it wasn't very difficult especially in that era where it was like the scholarship was the most important thing. So it was like, well, hold on. You just kind of put them on paper, and it was just like, all right, yeah, no, it was a no-brainer at that point.
What are you up to now? How are things?
Man, great. I've been in the oil and gas business for a while, and real estate for a while. No social medias. So if you don't have a number or my email,
I just hear from you every now and again.
I was just saying, if you don't have my number or my email, I don't really want to talk. I don't want to hear from you. If you don't, I don't have anywhere to get tweeted at or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. No, landman on the oil and gas side, and then started off building houses originally, and I've always stayed real estate adjacent. So staying that way, and I don't.
We're gonna see you on the boulevard, of course.
For sure. It's a good place. It's the best place on a Saturday. I live in Fort Worth. I get over as much as I can.
Yeah.
Kind of an old man though. Like I got a great chair, a great recliner where I watch a lot of football from the chair. So it takes. I make it for these home games over here. But if SMU's on the road, I'm catching football from the chair. And
you got 50-yard line seats from the chair.
Unbelievable. No line for the bathroom. Yeah. Unbelievably free drinks from the fridge. It's awesome. It's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for catching up with us, John. It was good seeing you, brother.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy and Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.